Richard Sterban, welcome to A Breath of Fresh Air. Great to have your company. How are you?
Well, it's my pleasure, certainly. And it's a pleasure to talk to you and all your viewers and listeners, whatever, out there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yes, well, we will definitely have both, because this will go up not only on the website and the podcast, but also on YouTube. So thanks a million for your time today. And congratulations on an awesome book. I want to know all about what's prompted you to write it, and give us a bit of a sneak preview of what we can read. But could we track back your career a little bit and come back to present day?
No problem whatsoever. Whatever you want to do, I'm here to do it.
Oh, yes. I like a man that plays into my hands, that's easygoing like that. That's great. That's great. Richard, you'd been with the Oak Ridge Boys since 1973. That's really quite a stint. Tell us how you started with them in the first place.
Well, I was singing actually in my own group that I helped organize. In fact, Joe Bonzel was in that group as well. And I got a call one day from a gentleman named J.D. Sumner, not J.D. himself, but his son-in-law. Now, J.D. Sumner is actually in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's lowest bass singer. And he wanted to hire a younger bass singer to take his place. He had businesses on the side that he wanted to devote his time to, publishing companies and a talent agency, and he wanted to hire a younger guy to take his place. So he called me and offered me the job. But it involved me having to move to Nashville. I was living in just outside of Buffalo, New York at the time, and I had to move to Nashville. And, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I was only there singing with J.D. Sumner and the Stamps for just a few months, and J.D. Sumner got a phone call that kind of changed our lives. It was from Elvis. Elvis was looking to hire a new backup group because the group that he had, called the Imperials, they had a conflict and they could not make the tour that was coming up. So Elvis had to hire a new group. He had a friendship with J.D. Sumner because they both lived in Memphis for many years together. And so to make a long story short, he hired J.D. Sumner and the Stamps to be his backup group. I happened to be there at that time. So here I am, a young man in my 20s, I found myself singing on stage with the biggest star in the world, with Elvis. And, it was a very special time. I got to know Elvis just a little bit. I have some great memories of the times I spent there. So it really was a special time in my life. And now that many years have passed, I look back on that. I'm glad I was able to experience that because it was a very special time in my life.
I'm sure. I can't imagine anything more special because, of course, that was when Elvis was really in his heyday, wasn't it? That was it, at the peak of his career.
There is no question. He was at his heyday. He was like an amazing person. In fact, in my book, I talk about the first time I ever met Elvis. And it was a special experience. Up to that point in my life, I was a fan of Elvis's, but I was more of a casual fan, if I could put it that way. When I joined the Stamps Quartet and we found out that we were going to be singing with Elvis, it involved us having to rehearse. So the tour started in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We went up there and gathered in the rehearsal hall where we were supposed to be. The TCB band, they were all there. The Sweet Inspirations, the backup singers, they were all there. Kathy Westmoreland, the girl soprano that sang with Elvis for years, she was there. And we kind of met these people and kind of hung out with them. But they said, Elvis is normally fashionably late. He likes to be fashionably late. But they said, this is a little bit unusual today. They said, because usually he doesn't make us wait this long. But to make the long story short, we hung out. And finally, we heard this commotion coming down the hall. The door opened, and Elvis walked into the room. And with his bodyguards, his entourage, And when he walked into the room, my jaw dropped. I went, wow. You know, I was, as I said, I was kind of a casual fan up to that point in my life. But when he walked through the room, I realized immediately why he was the biggest star in the world. He had such charisma, such magnetism. I'm not sure I could even think of the right word, but you could almost feel him walk into the room. It was a very special experience. He came over, he hugged us all around our necks. He called me by my first name and welcomed me into the organization. So it was meeting Elvis for the first time was a very special time. It really was.
So, what I'm hearing you saying is that despite his incredible aura, he was a pretty humble, down to earth guy himself.
He really was. He was a great guy. I enjoyed being around him. And I told you, I have some great memories of the times that, I spent with Elvis. And even though Elvis was the king of rock and roll, and he certainly was, I really believe deep down inside, his favorite music was gospel music. He loved gospel music. And what he wanted it to do quite often, especially when we were on tour, is to try to find a piano somewhere where we would all gather around the piano. And together with Elvis, we would sing gospel quartet songs. You know, he loved those gospel songs. He really loved the black spirituals too, and we would do a lot of that. In fact, I developed a new appreciation for spirituals just being around Elvis. But like I say, my memories are, of Elvis. Probably the fondest memories involve singing gospel songs.
Can you point to one particular song, Richard?
You know, to me, one of the highlights of Elvis's tour, not so much singing backstage but the actual show, he sang a well-known hymn, well-known gospel song called "How Great Thou Art." And when he would do that in the middle of his show, it would, a feeling would come over the audience. It's just unbelievable, and you could tell when he sang that song that he really felt it deep down inside. He believed what he was singing, and it was a special moment, in his show and in his tour almost every night.
Yeah, amazing. I'm chatting with Richard Sterban from the Oak Ridge Boys, who was playing with Elvis in his band, and of course you were with Elvis on that Elvis on tour in 1972. And that's now the soundtrack from that, I believe, is just coming out before Christmas as a box set for the very first time. So the legacy of Elvis just continues to live on and on, doesn't it? Does that surprise you so many years later?
It is kind of surprising, and in fact, quite often I think to myself, who in the music business today will be remembered like Elvis is remembered today, 35 years, almost 40 years after he passed away. And I just lost you for a minute. I hope we're still
we're
connected
good
here.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, fine. Yeah. But I often wondered, and I don't know that there's anyone else out there that I can name that will be as popular, 35 or 40 years after he passes away like Elvis is today. It's a phenomenon that's hard to believe. And, in our business, we have an expression called mailbox money. And what that is, you go to your mailbox and you get a check. And every now and then, even after all these years, even though I was a backup singer on Elvis's records, occasionally I still get a check. So it just shows you his records are still selling worldwide. It's quite a phenomenal thing.
Which was your favorite of all the tracks that you sang on?
My favorite of Elvis's songs?
Yeah.
Oh, that's, probably the biggest record that Elvis had while I was there is a song called Burning Love, a hunk of burning love. And I sing on that record. And I remember being in a recording session in Los Angeles at the RCA studios with Elvis. And Elvis recorded differently than most people. He had no idea what he was going to record until he got to the recording session. They started playing songs. They started playing demos. Most of what he heard, he did not like until they played Burning Love, when they played that song, boy, he sat up. He said, wow. He said, let's do this right here, right now. And right on the spot, we recorded that song. It was a lot of fun. And it's the biggest record he had while I was there. And I still hear it on the radio every now and then. And it makes me feel good that many, many years ago, I actually was part of Elvis's show.
Yeah. Did you have to do many takes of that song?
Pardon?
Did you have to do many takes of it to get it down right?
As I said a minute ago, Elvis recorded differently than most people. First of all, he recorded in a studio like he sang on stage. He used a handheld microphone, and he walked around like he's on stage. And that is an engineer's nightmare. It really is. But another thing was interesting about Elvis. Like most singers, he did not sing the same song 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 times till he got it right. He got it right the first time. Now, I think the most he ever recorded a song when I was with him was maybe twice. He's not going to. And if you're the engineer, when Elvis sings, you've got to get it because he's going to get it. It shows you how good he was. Because he got it on the very first take.
Wow, how incredible. Richard Sterban, your book is called From Elvis to Elvira, My Life on Stage. And of course, it refers to the fact that at the time you were on stage with Elvis, you accepted an offer to go and join the Oak Ridge Boys. Tell us about that.
Well, it was an interesting experience. It was a major decision that I had to make in my life, and it changed my life, really, to be very honest with you. It was in 1972, and apparently I was on top of the world singing with the king of rock and roll. And one day, I got a phone call, and it was from William Lee Golden of the Oak Ridge Boys. Now, if you're familiar with our group at all, he's the gentleman in our group with the long beard. The long, almost looks like Santa Claus or ZZ Top or something like that.
We know it, yeah.
However, back then in 1972, when he called me up, he did not have that long beard. He was Mr. GQ, if you know what I'm saying, Mr. Gentleman Quarterly, So he had a totally different look. But anyway, he called me and he said the bass singer in the Oak Ridge Boys was leaving the group, and the Oak Ridge Boys wanted to know if I would be interested in taking the job. Now, as I already said, I was apparently on top of the world singing with Elvis, but I had to make a decision, like, what do I do? And I had to admit, at the same time, I was a big fan of the Oak Ridge Boys. I was very familiar with their music. I loved the music that they were making. I actually collected their records. And I really felt like the group had a great deal of potential, and I wanted to be a part of it. I really did. So I thought it over for a day or so, and I called William Lee Golden back, and I told him I would take the job, And so I actually in 1972 left Elvis and joined the Oak Ridge Boys. And back then, a lot of people questioned that decision. How could you do that? How could you leave Elvis and join the Oak Ridge Boys? But I really believed I was doing the right thing. I believed down in my heart I was doing the right thing, and because I really wanted to be a part of the group. And now that I look back on that decision I made 50 years ago, I think I made a pretty good decision back then.
I think so too. I mean, the Oak Ridge Boys at the time were just in their formative years, weren't they? So you really had to believe that they had a big future.
Well, I think that's why people question my decision, because I was singing with the biggest star in the world, and outside of gospel music circles, the Oak Ridge Boys were not that well known. But I really believe, the Oak Ridge Boys had the potential to be a major, major act, and I really wanted to be a part of it. So I left Elvis and joined the Oak Ridge Boys. And, back then, when I was just a young man in my 20s, singing on stage with Elvis, I had no idea that someday I would be in the Country Music Hall of Fame together with Elvis. You never know how things are going to happen in your life. But I'm very blessed and very fortunate for the last 50 years. Not just me personally, but all 4 of the Oak Ridge Boys. We've been very blessed. We've had such a great career. And you walk if you walk into the Country Music Hall of Fame, you go into what they call the rotunda, which is the center of the building where all the acts' faces are in bronze on the wall. You'll see the four faces of the Oak Ridge Boys in bronze. And you look down the hallway just a short distance, and you will see Elvis. He's there. You will see Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton. The list goes on and on and on. And
I've
for the
been
Oak
there.
Ridge Boys, to be a part of that group, of that family, is so special. It's beyond words. It really is.
Richard Sterban, what do you think it is about the Oak Ridge Boys, and what has it been over the years that have made them so special, that have made them so popular, not only with country and Western fans, but right across the whole pop scene as well, because they really cross over, don't they?
Well, I think you're right. And I think there's several reasons. I think first and foremost, we love doing what we do. And that is reflected in the music. It really does. That makes a big difference. All the guys in our group are different. Each man brings something totally different to the table, so to speak. But that's part of our appeal. The fact that we're so different, but yet we all come together as a team is a very unusual concept. And so I think, the fact that we realized a long time ago that even though we're different, we respect that difference between the four of us, and we become friends. And I think we realized a long time ago that we need each other. So we pull together as a team. We're a true brotherhood, and that makes a difference. And now that we're older, I think we're better friends now than we were years ago when we were younger. I think, if anything, we're probably too old to let little things bother us.
You've learned along the way. I guess it's like being family, isn't it? You've got to have your squabbles, and then you kind of let it go and ride with them. But you've made some fabulous music over the years with the Oak Ridge Boys, and much of it's very diverse. Do you have a favorite amongst all the Oak Ridge Boys hits?
Of course, the obvious choice is Elvira. That is our signature song. And if you ever come to see the Oak Ridge Boys perform in person, you can count on the fact that you're going to hear Elvira. You're going to hear me do Giddy Up, Oom-pa-pa-oom-pa-pa-mow-mow. That is going to happen. That's our signature song. And I think probably second place is a song called Bobby Sue, but really, when I think about an Oak Ridge Boys show, probably a highlight of an Oak Ridge Boys show is when William Lee Golden, he's the guy in our group once again with the long beard, he sings a song called Thank God for Kids. And it is a special song written by a good friend of ours named Eddie Raven. And William Lee Golden has this way of interpreting a lyric to a song and then communicating that lyric to the audience. And you can tell when he's singing that song that it is touching people, it's moving people. You look at people holding hands, you look at people hugging their kids, maybe some tears in people's eyes, and it's a special moment. So to answer your question, I would probably have to say, and there could be a lot of other choices, but I think I'd have to say, Thank God for Kids.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, the music really does have the power to move people, doesn't it? And possibly to change the world in a greater sense too.
Well, you're right about that. And I think that's one of the things the Oak Ridge Boys, I think that's one of the things we take seriously. Yes, we want to make a contribution to the music business. And I think we have over the years. But I think even more important than that, we want to be an act that is remembered for helping people with our music. We've always tried to choose material that is very inspirational in nature and that can help people. Because when we look out on that audience every night, we have no idea what difficulties people are going through in this life. They could be having marital problems, they could be having financial problems, could be going through an illness or whatever. But if we can uplift these people with our music, I think we have helped these people. And in this day and age of social media, we get instant feedback of how our music has helped people. Yeah. So that makes us feel so good. It really does.
Yeah, how rewarding for you. An amazing contribution you're able to make. It's just incredible. Richard, just to go back to Elvira a little bit, tell me a little bit more about why you think that became the hit that it did. How did that become your signature tune?
Well, it's a very catchy song. It's a very happy song. You know, you cannot listen to Elvira without smiling. You know, there's something about it. When we hit the intro to that song, when we do the song live, and even 40 years later, people immediately stand up. They start singing along. They start dancing. It makes you just for a short while forget about your troubles and your cares. And when you do that, I think you help people. So I think it's a song that, once again, it's the, you know, in 1981, it was one of the largest selling singles in all the music business. And it is our signature song. There's no question about it. And one quick story about Elvira. I have never written a song myself, but I have talked to enough songwriters to know that they will tell you that you never know where you're going to get the inspiration to write a song. Many times it'll come from a very unexpected place. In the case of Elvira, gentleman, a good friend of ours who just passed away this year, Dallas Frazier, he wrote the song 17 years before we recorded it, believe it or not. He was driving home from a recording session here in Nashville with his producer, and he was driving through East Nashville, Tennessee. He came across a street sign, believe it or not, that said Elvira Street. He immediately pulled his car over to the street sign, and right there on the spot, he pulled out a piece of paper or an envelope or something and wrote down Elvira, Elvira, my heart's on fire for Elvira. And then he wrote the giddy up oom-pa-pa-oom-pa-pa-mow-mow part right there on the spot. And I heard him tell the story many times that the oom-pa-pa-mow-mow part imitates the bumps on the road. Elvira Street had a lot of potholes, and oom-pa-pa-mow-mow actually imitates, you know, the bumps on the road. Now he needed more song than that. So when he got home, he wrote verses about a woman, so it would all make more sense. But the original inspiration to write the Oak Ridge Boys' signature record came from a street sign in East Nashville, Tennessee.
Does the street still exist today?
Yes, it does. It's definitely a part of the city of Nashville.
Amazing. What an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing that. So as I know I have to wind up to let you go because you were only scheduled to give me 20 minutes. You're wearing a baseball outfit there, Richard Sterban, and I know one of your other great interests is baseball. In fact, you were part owner of a team, I believe, too, right?
You are absolutely correct. I am an avid baseball fan. If I'm not singing music with the Oak Ridge Boys, I'm usually watching baseball games. I just love the sport. It's my main hobby. It really is. And this baseball jersey and this cap that I have on here is from Vanderbilt University, which is right here in Nashville. It's college baseball, and Vanderbilt has one of the best college baseball programs in the country. So I'm a big fan. But you're right. We also have a team here in Nashville called the Nashville Sounds. It's a minor league baseball team, and for about 30 years, I was a part owner of the team. And once again, it's just a hobby of mine. It's something that I enjoyed playing with, and and I still love to go to baseball games. It's probably my release, if I can use that way, the way I kind of get away and relax.
And do people leave you alone there, or do they clamor for autographs and photos and the like?
Well, like if I go to a Vanderbilt baseball game or to a Nashville Sounds game, I've been going to those games for years. People know me, so it's usually not a problem.
Right. So just back to the book to finish off, From Elvis to Elvira: My Life on Stage. What prompted you to write this now?
I signed with Elvis 50 years ago now, and for the last 50 years. Many, many, many times I would end up talking about my experiences with Elvis. When people found out that I used to sing with Elvis, immediately they want to know what kind of a guy was Elvis? Tell me some Elvis stories. What was it like working with Elvis? And I spent so much time over the years talking about that one day I decided, maybe I should write some of this down. So that's what I did. I am not a writer. I do not pretend to be a writer, but I got together with a very good friend of mine who's probably the best Elvis historian that I know. He's also a great writer. And we took some time, and took us about a year to write this book. We tried to get it as factual as possible. But first of all, I love the title. I think that the title kind of says it all, from Elvis to Elvira. And if you are an Elvis fan, you'll love the book. There's great Elvis stories in there. If you're an Oak Ridge Boys fan, you'll love the book, because there's great Oak Ridge Boys stories in there. But it's really my personal story. You get to know me just a little bit better. I go back to the first singing that I ever did, believe it or not, as a boy soprano. And I talk about my voice changing and going up singing, the gospel music, and then eventually country music with the Oak Ridge Boys. So I'm really proud of the way it turns out. Once again, I love the title. It's called From Elvis to Elvira, and that really says it all. I think it does.
What's next for you, Richard Sterban?
Well, in fact, I earlier today I was asked that very same question, and my answer was the same that I'm going to give you right here. The Oak Ridge Boys do not plan to retire anytime soon. We're not kids. You can tell by looking at me. I'm not a kid any longer. And we're all older guys. But fortunately, the good Lord has blessed the four of us with pretty good health. And so I think as long as the good Lord above keeps allowing the four Oak Ridge Boys to experience good health, we're going to keep doing what it is that we do. And that's singing music, traveling all over the country, trying to entertain people and help people with our music. We already have plans next year to go into the studio again. We're now being produced by a gentleman named Dave Cobb. He's one of the hottest names here in Nashville, in the music business. He's already agreed to do another album on us. It'll be next year sometime. I don't have a title. I don't have a list of songs or anything like that, other than that we're talking about it, and we definitely plan to do it again. So my immediate time or plans for the next few years, while the Oak Ridge Boys are still together, is to, the best I can to be the best Oak Ridge boy and the best bass singer I can be.
You never thought to upgrade the name to Oak Ridge Men?
There you go. No, but we're getting, as long as we can get away with calling ourselves boys, we're going to do just that.
Awesome. Richard Sterban, thank you so much for joining us today. What a pleasure to meet you and hear your stories. And if people do want to hear more, read more of the stories from Elvis to Elvira, My Life on Stage, the story of the Oak Ridge Boys, Richard Sterban, what a wonderful read it is. Some fabulous memories. Congratulations on the book, and thanks so much for your time today, Richard.
Well, thank you for allowing me to talk to you, and to your fine viewers and listeners out there. I had a good time, and I appreciate it.